If you woke up tomorrow morning, logged into your bank app, and noticed $500 was missing, no transaction history, no explanation, just gone, you'd be livid. You'd call the bank. You'd demand to see the CCTV. You'd be on a warpath until you found out where that money went. But yesterday, you likely lost 4 hours to a digital nothingness, a blur of endless scrolling, half-finished tasks, and just checking notifications, and you probably didn't even notice. We treat our money like it's finite, and our time like it's infinite. But the math is actually the opposite. You can always make more money. You can never, ever make more time. In my last video, we looked at the science of why we procrastinate, but today I want to talk about the leaks. There is a much more dangerous, invisible bug in our mental software that causes our entire lives to disappear in the background. Our time leaks out in tiny, unremarkable moments, and we say that it's just life. 2,000 years ago, a group of people discovered this glitch. They realized that if you don't actively plug it, you end up living a life that someone else, or today, some algorithm, is writing for you. They were the Stoics. They didn't have productivity apps, so they had to build a mental operating system. Here are the 10 patches they used to reclaim their reality. Hack 1. The hidden transaction. Most of us think we get things for free. We think a free app is free, or checking the news is free. But the Stoics, specifically Seneca, who was a high-level political advisor and one of the wealthiest men in Rome, argued that we are vices of our own time. He noted that people are incredibly protective of their land and their money, yet the moment it comes to time, they are most wasteful of the only thing in which it is right to be stingy. Noting that most of life was one form of trade or another, whether you realized it or not, he proposed the question, now embodied within Stoic philosophy: what am I buying with this minute? When you realize that your attention is the most valuable currency on the planet, the thing that multi-billion-dollar companies are fighting a literal war over, you start to see just scrolling differently. You wouldn't pay $50 to look at a stranger's lunch photos. So why are you paying for it with 10 minutes of your life? The moment you see time as a non-refundable currency, the leaks in your day become visible. Hack 2. The rent-free room, the Stoic filter. Even if you stop the external distractions, your mind is often still wasting time internally. The Stoics were obsessed with a concept called the dichotomy of control. Think of your brain's processing power like RAM in a computer. Most of us have 90% of our RAM running background processes that we can't actually close. An argument we had 6 months ago, the weather next weekend, or what a total stranger thinks of us. The Stoics realized that most human suffering and most wasted time comes from trying to control things that are outside of our power. When you spend 2 hours worrying about a flight delay or a Facebook comment, you are arguing with reality, and reality always wins. Stoicism is about force closing the apps you can't control. By ruthlessly separating what is up to us from what is not up to us, you reclaim 100% of your processing power for the one thing that matters: your next move. This doesn't mean you don't care. It simply means you stop wasting precious time on something you cannot influence. If you can influence it positively, then you should take action. Hack 3. The later illusion, memento mori. We all live under a dangerous, comforting delusion, the existence of later. We treat later as a real place where we are more disciplined, more energetic, and more focused. But Seneca famously said, "The one thing all fools have in common is they are always getting ready to start." The Stoics used a practice called memento mori. Remember, you will die. Yes, I know. Cheerful, but stay with me. It sounds morbid, but it wasn't meant to be depressing. It was a wake-up call. They would keep symbols of mortality around to remind them that the clock isn't just ticking, it's counting down. When you realize that later is a fictional country where your best intentions go to die, now becomes the only time that actually exists. If you knew the clock was visible in the corner of your eye, would you still be doing what you're doing right now? Hack 4. Visualizing what could go wrong in a dispassionate way. Why do we actually waste time? Usually, it's a form of emotional avoidance. We avoid a task because we're afraid it will be difficult, or we're anxious about the outcome. The Stoics had a fix for this called premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. They would intentionally spend time imagining objectively what could go wrong in their day. Their goal was to mentally prepare for any adverse outcome, reduce fear, and practice gratitude for the present. If you've already played through the laptop breaking, or the client being rude, or the project failing, you rob those events of their power to surprise you. When the bad thing happens, you don't waste 3 hours in a paralyzed state of shock or anger. You simply execute the plan you've already rehearsed. Calm is just another word for being prepared. Hack 5. The satellite view. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, and probably the most famous Stoic. He had the weight of the known world on his shoulders. To keep from being crushed by the stress, he used a mental exercise called the view from above. He would imagine himself looking down at his body, zooming out to see the city of Rome, then the empire, then the entire earth, then the vast stretch of time before and after his life. From that height, his massive problems looked like what they actually were: tiny, temporary blips in the history of the universe. When we are stressed, our perspective shrinks. A single email can feel like a giant wall right in front of our face. By zooming out, you return your problems to their correct size. Small problems shouldn't take up big time. Seneca said, "There are more things to frighten us than to crush us, and suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Hack 6. The half-second gap. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust by leaning on Stoic principles, noted that between each stimulus and its response, there is a brief space. In that space lies our power to choose. Think about your typical day. Stimulus: you feel a slight pang of boredom. Response: you reach for your phone. Stimulus: someone cuts you off in traffic. Response: you spend the next 10 minutes fuming. The Stoic mind hack is to widen that gap. It's the Stoic pause. If you can catch yourself in that half second before the reaction happens, you reclaim your agency. You can ask, is this reaction actually useful? Does this serve the person I want to be? If the answer is no, you just saved yourself a 3-hour mood spiral or a wasted afternoon. Hack 7. Training the spoiled child. Voluntary discomfort. Your brain, at its most primitive level, is like a spoiled child. It demands constant comfort. If it's a little too cold, it can't work. If the chair is uncomfortable, it loses focus. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to break this cycle. They would periodically eat only the simplest foods, or sleep on the floor, or take cold baths. They weren't trying to punish themselves. They were proving to their own nervous systems that they could be uncomfortable and still be okay. When you realize that comfort isn't a requirement for action, you become dangerous. You stop wasting time waiting for perfect conditions to start your work, because you've trained yourself to thrive in imperfect ones. Hack 8. The character audit. Role ethics. We often waste time because we are acting without an identity. We're just reacting to whatever notification pops up. The Stoics used role ethics to stay on track. They viewed themselves through their different roles: the friend, the worker, the citizen, the parent. Epictetus, a former slave and famous Stoic, said that our first job is to know who we are. When you're stuck in a rut, ask yourself, who am I being right now? Usually when we're wasting time, we're being the spectator or the consumer. By consciously shifting your identity back to the creator or the student, you change the rules of your behavior. It's much harder to waste 4 hours when you've explicitly decided that, for the next 2 hours, your role is the focused creator. Hack 9. Reviewing the project of life. In project management, a formal review of a project's progress, performance, and outcomes happens at key stages to ensure it continues to meet its objectives. The reviews identify issues and opportunities for improvement and provide valuable feedback for decision-makers and lessons learned for future projects. The Stoics had their own version of project life reviews, from early morning preparation or rehearsal to evening performance reviews. Before sleep, they would look back at the day and ask, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? And what will I do differently tomorrow? If you don't review the data of your life, you're just repeating the same bugs in the software every single day. Reflection acts as the software update for your habits. Hack 10. The alchemist's mindset. Amor fati. The final boss of Stoic time management is a concept called amor fati, a love of fate. Most of us waste an incredible amount of time wishing things were different from what they are. I wish I didn't get this flat tire. I wish it weren't raining. The Stoic doesn't just tolerate what happens to them. They use it to their advantage. As Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. A flat tire becomes a test of your patience. A canceled meeting becomes a gift of some quiet time. By instantly accepting what happens, you stop leaking time into the black hole of complaining or ruminating. You turn the obstacle into the fuel for your next action. The Stoics didn't want to turn us into emotionless robots. They wanted to turn us into life owners. We live in an attention economy. There are thousands of the world's smartest engineers currently working on ways to keep you looking at a screen for just 5 seconds longer. The truth is that in this world, being productive isn't about getting more stuff done, but rather an act of rebellion against the status quo. It's a declaration that your life belongs to you, because your days don't disappear in dramatic disasters. They disappear in tiny, unchallenged defaults. And the Stoics, very bluntly, didn't think your life was meant to be lived by default. They thought it was meant to be chosen. So, tomorrow morning, when you reach for your phone before your eyes are even fully open, just remember the Stoic trade. Is what you're about to see worth the price of the only life you'll ever have? Hi, I'm Arthur from Thinkybits. We hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new from it. If you'd like to support the channel to make new videos, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell notification. If you're interested in a proven microsystem to help you overcome procrastination, please click the link in the description for more information from our training partner. Until next time, stay curious.